Hey everybody and welcome. Today I would like to make a few things with Brushos and Stencils. I would like to share some backgrounds I make with Brushos and some Collage Fodder pieces. Brushos are watercolor pigment powders if you don't know them. They are similar to the Lindy's Magicals, I think, to the Color Bursts. Not sure. There are some more other brands. Infusions, I think, are the same type of stuff. And they come in these little tins, and I poked a hole into the top so I can easily use them. And I have them for, I would say, 15 years now. And they will last forever. There's so much powder in there, and you don't need a lot. And I've used them regularly for my work, for art journal pages, paper crafting, backgrounds, whatever. And they are really fun. I recently discovered that they are also very nice to play in my sketchbook for textures on the background. So let's start with my favorite way of using them, I think, is to make collage fodder elements. And it's a bit small, my piece of paper. Doesn't matter. Let's try that. And I haven't used them so far with the new Sketchy Leaf stencil, and that is the first thing I would like to try out. Color-wise, I tend to always work with the same colors, which is very often that purple, that sandstone. And the gamboge is also one of my favorites. Today I would like to try to go a little bit different. I have a lot of blues in there, and maybe I will go with some bluish colors today. Maybe blue and a little bit of that orange, which is the complementary color, and maybe a touch of, let's say, turquoisey color. Or emerald green, that's also really nice. So I'm getting prepared by opening the tins because I have to work quickly. And it's also quite a messy thing, and sometimes things don't work out and don't look good, but I don't mind that. If something doesn't turn out nice, I often use the backgrounds to do some die cutting with it. Or I just add more to them and make them to artist trading card backgrounds or whatever. By the way, this is not a voiceover. I'm doing this directly from my studio today. That might be that the video is a bit longer than usual. I hope you don't mind that. But when it's quiet in our house, then this is easier for me because I then can save the time for doing a voiceover. So sometimes I do it in German, and sometimes I do it in English. And today I decided to do it in English because I think it's a bit easier to make the voiceover in German later. So I have the Canson watercolor paper here, and I have water in a spray bottle. And for the first round, I will just spray. Let's cut that off, because the paper will get wet. So I will just cut that off, leave it for later. I'm placing the stencil on the watercolor paper. It's a tiny little bit too small, I would say, from the height. Could be a bit bigger. And then I'm just spritzing water through the stencil, and that's the tricky part. You don't want to add too much, but you need a certain amount to get a nice effect. And then immediately I'm spritzing the powders through the stencil. I'm sprinkling. I add a little bit of every color I have. Don't add too much. I often tend to add too much. I would now just add a little bit here because there's nothing, and then I quickly remove that stencil from the paper, and then I can let that dry. And that's what I love about this technique. You get so different and surprising results. Now I would let this dry. It's a little bit less water in this area, so maybe we can go in. I'm just searching for a brush. I recently got some from Etcher, and I don't like them. They don't hold. They are watercolor brushes, and they don't hold the water. Just a tiny amount. I don't like them. Definitely not. And they are super expensive. And I got them because I have a class with them, and that was kind of a payment thing. And usually Etcher is in Australia, and guess where these brushes were sent from? They were sent from China to me, and that I think it's a bit disappointing because they are super expensive, but they manufacture their brushes in China, and I bet they don't pay a lot for them. So I don't like them. Yeah, I will now let this dry, and later I can cut these out and use them on my projects. Now I have this stencil left with all the ink, and you can use it to just print that or put that onto a piece of paper, and maybe then you can use that for a background. And therefore I would not use the watercolor paper because it's very textured. I would like to use that Canson mixed media paper. It has 200 GSM and it is very smooth. And this will take the pigment, the ink that's on the stencil, more easy than the watercolor paper. When I'm pushing it from the stencil, I'm just searching for my paper for my kitchen roll because I need something to soak the excess off. I have a big mess in my studio because I did jelly printing the whole weekend. We had a video for members on Saturday about painting on the jelly plate and made some lovely botanical paintings. And I did a lot more this weekend. I made some owls and some landscapes, and I had a lot of fun doing that. That's why I need the kitchen towel, because it will press the water out of the stencil. And that sometimes gives you messy colors, but sometimes it also gives you quite nice colors. And what I would do now, add a little bit more color in here because it's still wet, to just make it a bit more interesting and special. And everything that is not dissolving with water, you can just brush that off once everything is dry. And then there is no more powder on there. If there is a little bit too much of water, you can just soak that up with the kitchen roll paper. And that can make a nice tag background. Just imagine to cut a tag from it and you have already a really interesting background on there. Let's move forward. Let's make some more backgrounds, and I'm going to use just that paper again. And I'm just going to place a stencil here to create a background texture. Well, let's start with the watercolor paper and that stencil, and let's spritz. Do the same that we did for the Collage Fodder elements, and then we will press this to the mixed media paper. That's not one of the new stencils, that's an older one from last January, and I really like it because it has such an interesting texture. Now I'm going again for the purple. I can't stop doing that. But I will use the emerald and also the orange together. Really like that combo. And then I immediately lift that. And maybe I put a little bit too much water through the stencil, and that sometimes happens. But usually the backgrounds still look quite nice once they are dry. So I'm going to put that aside as well, and I will show you all the dried things later. Now we are going to press that onto. Sometimes I'm not sure if there is enough powder on it. What I will definitely do is spritz a little bit more water onto the stencil, because I think there was not a lot. You can have a look at it and see if you think there is enough, but you need a little bit of water to just make sure that it will transfer to the paper. And I think it's a very nice way to create your own design papers, so you have some more unique things. Oh, I love that. I think that's very pretty. And you could add a few more Brusho powder pigments. And if there is water, then they will bleed into it, and you can then tap off the rest once everything is dry. So don't do it now, because then everything will become a mess. I think it's not wet enough to add more, but I think that's a really lovely background. I think I'm going to cut that off so I can use this as well for some other projects. And I'm putting this aside to let it dry. What I also really like is that you can make these smaller textures. I'm just cleaning off this area so I have a little bit more space. You can use these tiny textures to create lovely marks on a project, and I will just demo this here. I would maybe recommend doing it also on backgrounds that have already color on them. And here I would just spritz through the stencil, and then also sprinkle. You can either lift the stencil and then sprinkle, also a way you can work, or you could sprinkle the powders through the stencil. Just explore what you like the best. When you do it through the stencil, you have the powder on the stencil to then print it on another piece. If you don't do that, you have more powder, only the powder on your paper and not on your stencil, so you maybe save a little bit of that powder. And these make really nice marks on a background that's already done, and that does not work over acrylics. You have to use a watercolor background, some porous paper, so the brushes will dry and stay in place. Let's try this a second time, maybe with this part. And this time I'm going to just use the stencil with the brushes. That also works quite nice. And then you can add a bit more water to the stencil so all the powders will dissolve. And then we can press it to the paper. Maybe use a new piece of paper. It would be a bit easier. Or wait until the other texture has dried, and that also gives you some really lovely textures. let's dry this and maybe add some more textures later, and let's see if we can get a background to work with. What's really good, if you have some powders on the stencil, they are water reactive, so if it becomes dry because you're waiting for something, it does not matter, just spritz it with water and you can reactivate them. Now let's try something else. I'm not sure if this is going to work because it's been a while that I've done it, and I think I did it on Bristol paper. So let's search for the Bristol paper. I think I did this in the past for a Stencil Girl project I did. I think it might be 10 years ago. I don't know. And back at this time I used watercolors, but today I would like to use the Brushos, and the difference we are doing is we're going to let the stencil dry on the paper and see what happens. So I'm just laying the stencil over the paper and spritzing that with water. Well, let's use that stencil as well. Let's use both. Spritzing everything with a good amount of water. And then let's just add some powders. I really like the orange with that emerald green color. I think that's quite pretty. Again, do not overwork it. I tend to do that because you need less than you think. I will now put this aside. It's very difficult to do that. And let it dry, and then once it's dry I will come back and we will do a little more. We will add some more textures to that piece I just did, and I will show you how the Collage Fodder images turned out. It's me again. I would like to try something else for the Collage Fodder pieces. This time I'm turning the stencil around. So it goes in the different direction. I would like to try it on Bristol paper, because on Bristol these watercolor pigments turn out much more intense than they would do on a watercolor paper. I think that's because of the texture. And let's grab another stencil to place that next to the other. I'm going to use these Sketchy Leaves 5, and these are the new ones, Sketchy Leaves 6. I think all the others are already sold out. Not sure if some are left from the stencil, from the Sketchy Leaves 4, maybe a few. I'm thinking about the color. I use a lot of pink in my work, so maybe we will use pink, gamboge maybe, and another color that goes well with this would be the traditional color, I think, for this combo, a turquoisey or sea green. Let's go for the greenish one. These two are very nice. Let's work with those. I don't want to add too much because it has to work out quickly. Maybe that would also be nice, the moss green. So let's add a fourth color. I think I'm going to start on the left side and then add the powders, and then I will spritz the right, because I'm a bit afraid that the water might dry too quick. Well, with the Bristol paper, I think the water stays a little bit longer on the top of the paper instead of sinking in and drying. So that might be also good. Let's push this up first. A good, or maybe that was a mistake because now I'm spritzing over this. I was afraid it will give a mess when I do not remove the stencil. Let's use just a piece of paper to save the side from the water. Okay, I think you might have more time with the Bristol compared to watercolor paper. I think 3 colors are enough, and here you can see how less powder you need to get something down. Let's move this up. That's really lovely. And now I have 2 more of these left. And I really like this color combination. The Bristol paper is buckling a bit more than the watercolor paper, but I think that's not an issue at all once it's dry. So I will set this aside and then also let it dry. And now let's just use these stencils again, these messy ones. And let's just also use that Bristol paper. And I'm going to spritz them with a little bit more water. And then I will lay them down. And then I will let this dry with the stencil over the top. I'm just searching for my water spray now because it is lost. Completely lost. I don't know. Oh, here it is. Oh my god, I'm making such a mess. I'm just pressing this down, and you get really inky fingers when you're working with Brushos. But I think it's always a lot of fun because of the results you get. It's such a big variety of textures and color combos, and it's always a surprise, which I really like. Okay, I will now let this sit here to let that dry, and once everything is dry, I will be back and show you, and maybe we will finish something off. I am back, and this is almost dry, not 100%. That is, these both are the Bristol backgrounds where I let the stencil, everything dry with the stencil over the top, and that made maybe a little bit more mess because the water had time to bleed, but I really like the results. And in some areas the stencil would a bit stick to the paper and will give you really sharp texture, like here or in this area. I really like that. And these were the opposite side from these Collage Fodder pieces I made. I will show you these immediately. And I think these backgrounds are really nice. For example, to make a tag. Imagine cutting out a tag from this, how beautiful that background already is. Or a card background for greeting card, or just a piece of it to put on an art journal page. You could make artist trading cards with them. You're just cutting this as a background or part of that, like this. And I think that's a really nice way of using these, and you did not waste any of the powders. Same here, cut tags from it or cut backgrounds. Yeah, whatever you like. Let's see, these are on the watercolor paper, and let's pull this back. That's a bit, I'm not sure if it's visible on camera, and I think the Bristol paper gives a little bit more pop of the color compared to watercolor paper, but both, I like both. The weakest in color, I think, is the Canson mixed media paper. The watercolor paper worked quite nicely. The mixed media paper, I think there the pigments dull down a little bit more than on the other papers. And these were these two backgrounds, really lovely backgrounds. This is maybe a bit too messy. I added a little bit too much water, but I think you can still use it for a tag background, greeting card background, or whatever you like to use it for. Same with this and same with this, and I will definitely share some projects in the upcoming videos using these papers, so you can see what you can do with them. Let's have a flip through the Collage Fodder pieces. I love these. I use them a lot in my art journal, on cards, tags, or other projects. And these are the ones, let's turn this around maybe, and these are the ones I did on Bristol paper, and I love this color combo with the moss green in it, really nice. Also this color combo is very pretty, and I cut all of them out and I left a white border around them so they pop a little bit more and they have kind of a glow around. And these are the ones I did on the watercolor paper. They are a bit more heavy. I think they are, might be 300 GSM, and the Bristol is a 200 GSM. Yeah, really like them. And now let's just add a little something to this piece. And this is also something I could make into a tag or an artist trading card background. And I would like to add a little bit more texture with one of the stencils. And I would really like using that star stencil because I'm a big fan of a star pattern. And this time I will not make the stars on my paper because I just don't have a piece of paper here and I don't know what to do with some single stars now. So I'm just spritzing that stencil with water. And I make sure that there is plenty on here so I can transfer it. And now I'm just sprinkling the powders on there. I just not sure which color. Maybe we go for the moss green because I like that so much. And maybe I will just also use a smaller area because I don't have a big paper, so maybe I added too much water now because I don't use the whole stencil. Now let's press that down. And we will see if this is working. Oh, not so. Well, there are some really nice dots here. I think that's quite nice. Maybe let's add the same here. We need a bit more water and a bit more pigment in this area. And now let's add this here. Let's use a fresh. Oh, there is plenty left because I was afraid to press that down. Well, that's not the result that I was searching for. I wanted, you can always go into with a brush and move the pigments a little bit. I think the color combo is nice and there's definitely something that I will do with the background. I would like to add a little bit green here, but not with the stencil because it's just a small area. Just sprinkle them down there like they are. Just a little bit of green here. And then I'm going to let that dry. It's a messy background. And just let us use that stencil because I really like the color on there and I don't want to waste the pigment let's use it with the Bristol because it's just laying next to me. I'm adding a bit more water and maybe another color. The orange was quite nice here. And then I'm pressing it onto the paper. You need to give it a good press. So it's always better to let layers dry before you put down the next layer. And here you can see where the ink is going. You can press it a little bit further if you like to. Some stars are already messed up because there's so much water on there, but I think that does not matter. That's lovely. I really like it. It's a lovely background. Definitely perfect for a tag or a card, or maybe just as an art journal and make kind of a scene with it. Yes, I hope you enjoyed that video and you are inspired to make a mess with your pigment powders. Maybe you have others, but that will work with all of them in the same way. Yes, I hope we will see us next time. Have a wonderful rest of the week. Bye.